Mr. Chairman, members and staff, I am a senior officer attached to the DCI's Counter-Terrorist Center, currently assigned to the FBI. From September 1998 until May 2001 as an operations manager, I was privileged to work alongside a group of extraordinary officers from the CIA, the FBI, and other agencies who were and remain committed to combating the threat posed by bin Laden and those he has inspired. In May of 2001, I moved over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where I have since worked as a CIA detailee in the Counterterrorism Division, a position in which I've also focused on the bin Laden menace. I would like to read a short statement, and then the written version will be submitted for the record.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I would like to observe that even after 10 months of incredible effort by the U.S. military and others in Afghanistan, and by the agencies you see represented before you here today and others here and abroad, Al-Qaeda remains poised to strike again. What we say in this venue over the coming weeks will be closely followed by the very people who are just trying to destroy you, me, our families, and our way of life. I want to stress, speaking on behalf of those still carrying the battle to Al-Qaeda inside Afghanistan and out, that we do not and cannot for the foreseeable future view this group as anything view this group and its emulators and sympathizers as anything less dangerous than they were at this time last year. While we have an obligation to ensure that our flaws are identified and corrected, we must also take great care that we not educate the enemy while we are at it. With those comments, I now turn to the specific topic we have been invited here to review. Your staff has laid out the basic facts, so I won't repeat them in detail, but I'd like to walk through the most significant elements in summary form. In late 1999, the U.S. counterterrorist community launched a global effort aimed at disrupting terrorist operations we knew were being planned for the millennium turnover, and that we suspected would carry over into the end of the Muslim month of Ramadan, which was to occur in early January 2000. Dozens of terrorists and terrorist support nodes were disrupted. Both CIA and the FBI, as well as other members of the intelligence community, surged large numbers of officers for this effort, and they worked round the clock through roughly mid-January through 15 January 2000. During that heightened alert, the CIA, the FBI, and other members of the intelligence community were also working over data they had shared relevant to the Nairobi and Dar es Salaam embassy bombings that had occurred in August 1998. In December 1999, this intelligence provided a kind of a tuning fork that buzzed when two individuals reportedly planning a trip to Kuala Lumpur were linked indirectly to a support element that we suspected had played a role with the Africa bombers. A CTC officer, noting the linkage, set in motion a complex series of operations aimed at determining their identity, their contacts, and ideally, what they were doing. The operation succeeded in its first phase. Within a very short period of time, we learned the name of one of the travelers, Khalid al-Mithar. We learned where they were staying and the name of several of their local contacts. We were unable to complete the second phase of the operation, however. We did not learn the identities of the other participants in the meeting at the time, and were unable to determine and still do not know what they discussed during that meeting. While the meeting was in progress, via CIA officers detailed to the FBI, CTC kept the FBI advised of developments via verbal briefings. As you know, for a number of years, the FBI has had agents and analysts working integrally with CTC, including in the CTC's bin Laden element. And CIA officers, in turn, have also served in various components of the FBI, including also in the bin Laden unit of the FBI headquarters. Part of the job on either side, especially during moments of crisis, is to provide verbal briefs on the fly because before shifting attention to the next facet of the crisis. We prefer to document significant transfers of information, both to assure ourselves that it was passed and also to create a detailed record for our own operations officers and analysts who at a later date draw on such data to do a variety of tasks. In this case, CTC did not formally document to the FBI the conversations between the CIA referents and the FBI supervisors they briefed. CTC did note in a cable to the field that Al-Midhar's passport information had been passed to the FBI, but to date, we have been unable to confirm either passage or receipt of the information, so we cannot say what the exact details were that were passed. As the operations unfolded, a piece of data that in hindsight turned out to be critical revealed Al-Midhar's passport information and that he had earlier obtained a visa to the United States. Under ideal conditions, that passport data should have been provided to the State Department's tip-off program, which is designed to help keep terrorists from entering the U.S. from abroad. At this point, both Al-Midhar and his companion, who would turn out to be another hijacker, Nawaf al-Hazmi, had their visas. Later in early March 2000, long after the dust had settled in Malaysia, information surfaced indicating that Al-Midhar's partner was named Nawaf al-Hazmi. In early March, CIA also received information indicating that al-Hazmi had booked a flight that terminated in Los Angeles on 15 January 2000. Again, the new information on al-Hazmi was not disseminated. After the October 2000 bombing of the USS Cole, the Al-Midhar and al-Hazmi data resurfaced when the FBI learned that an individual alleged to have been a key planner of the Cole attack had been in Southeast Asia at the same time as the Malaysia meeting. This raised the possibility that the planner of that Cole attack had been at the meeting. The person I'm discussing, it was this person, Khalad, who was mentioned in the previous testimony. At the time I wrote this, did not have the full declassified version. Seeking to develop more information on that hypothesis, that Khalad had been at the meeting, and related to other information linking some Cole operatives to possible unknown contacts in Malaysia, the FBI and CIA sought to develop more information about the other people at the meeting. Early in 2001, more intelligence was developed that strengthened the hypothesis that this key planner had been one of the participants in the January 2000 meeting with Al-Midhar and al-Hazmi. At the time, the focus was on the USS Cole investigation and on understanding what had occurred in Malaysia, not on whether these individuals had been watch-listed. In mid-summer 2001, although the presence of the key planner in Malaysia had yet to be confirmed, while burrowing through intelligence related to other terrorist activity in Malaysia, the data from January 2000 and January 2001 was put together in a different way. And both the FBI and the CIA began to work to flesh out their understanding of all the people linked to the key planner of the Cole attack, of all the people linked to Khalad. In the course of that work, in mid-August 2001, CIA and FBI learned that Al-Midhar had entered the U.S. in January 2000, departed at a later date, and then re-entered in July 2001. CTC notified a number of agencies officially within a short time, and the FBI began an investigation to backtrack from Al-Midhar's immigration documents in an effort to find him. But he had not registered at the hotels indicated on his forms, and time ran out before other venues could be searched. How could these misses have occurred? I do not want to speculate at any great length about this at this point, because I really don't have a definitive answer. But I should try to put the events into some kind of context. The events I've summarized above took place in the context of a worldwide campaign that also focused on people we knew were trying to kill Americans. The CIA operators focused on the Malaysia meeting while it occurred. When it was over, they focused on other, more urgent operations against threats, real or assessed. Of the many people involved, no one detected that the data generated by this operation, the Malaysia meeting, crossed a reporting threshold, or if they did, they assumed that the reporting requirement had been met elsewhere. In a later session, officers who served in CTC after 9/11 will expand on the revisions and new training that have been put into place to reduce the chances of this happening again. There are new types of watch lists and new very low thresholds for entering names onto them. They will be discussed by others more familiar with the details and the protocols. What I will say here is that new procedures and training aside, They are also the kinds of misses that happen when people, even very competent, dedicated people, such as the CIA officers and the FBI agents and analysts involved in all aspects of this story, are simply overwhelmed. The counterterrorism business often does not feature a large team going after a single target, but rather one or two officers juggling multiple activities against many people, simultaneously trying to make sense of what it means, which target deserves priority attention, and balancing the interests of multiple stations, liaison services, and U.S. agencies. I would like to say that we will get it right 100% of the time. In fact, we're in a business here where we have to get it right 100% of the time, because the animal only has to get it right once. While I can't promise that we'll ever completely reach that goal of perfection, I have no doubt that those working in counterterrorism will never stop trying to get there. And I'll just add a little statement that's not in my prepared statement. We appreciate the help. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rolnice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my prepared remarks, I would just like to say for the record that I am honored and proud to follow an individual with whom I worked closely for the last several years and whom I consider to be one of the finest counterterrorism experts in the world. Mr. Chairman, members of the committees, I am pleased to appear before you today to describe the FBI's role within the intelligence community and our knowledge and actions from approximately December 1999 through September 11, 2001. My testimony will cover the knowledge of and actions taken by the FBI prior to September 11, 2001 regarding Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, as well as information learned about them after the attack. I will touch upon the issue of the FBI's investigation of al-Midhar as an intelligence case versus a criminal target. I will discuss the interaction between the FBI and CIA, as well as others in the intelligence and law enforcement community. I would also like to provide an overview of the makeup of the international jihad movement and explain how it encompasses many groups and organizations to include bin Laden and the al-Qaeda network. As members of the intelligence community, we have been asked to discuss the exchange and flow of information within the community and its impact into the events leading up to September 11th. In that context, we've also been asked to discuss specifically the investigative efforts into the two of the September 11th hijackers. The investigation into the activities of Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi illustrates with acute clarity that considerable individual effort and collective resources will not always result in a successful outcome. Notwithstanding the improvements over the last few years within the intelligence community and exchange in personnel and information, and despite the extensive work performed by many individuals, the various intelligence community agencies, and the war on terrorism, the desired goal to protect our country was not realized. We have all learned that isolated events and unintentional incidents of inaction do not remain in a vacuum. Individually, and certainly collectively, they have consequences. Through a collaborative effort within the community, the CIA received information that a meeting of individuals possibly associated with Osama bin Laden's terrorist network took place in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in early January 2000. Among those attending the meeting were Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, along with the key UBL operative Khalid. At the time al-Midhar and al-Hazmi were arriving in Malaysia, the CIA advised the FBI of their interest in these two individuals and indicated they would keep the FBI advised of further developments if warranted. In March 2000, the CIA received information concerning the re-entry or the entry of al-Midhar and al-Hazmi into the United States. In January 2001, the CIA obtained information which indicated a key individual associated with the USS Cole bombing had also attended the aforementioned Malaysia meeting. This was important because it placed al-Midhar and al-Hazmi in direct contact with a key operative of UBO. During the spring and summer of 2001, analytical personnel from the CIA and FBI were working together to pursue avenues into the bombing of the USS Cole. On August 23, 2001, the CIA advised FBI HQ that on June 13, 2001, al-Midhar obtained a U.S. visa in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, using a Saudi Arabian passport and provided his intended address as the Marriott Hotel, New York City. This visa was valid until October 3, 2001. The same day, the FBI received a copy of a CIA communication to watchlist al-Midhar. This information was emailed to FBI New York on August 24, 2001. On August 24, 2001, FBI HQ received a copy of al-Midhar's visa application from the United States Embassy in Saudi indicating indicating al-Midhar had sponsored his own travel to the United States. The application listed al-Midhar's plans to remain for 1 month to depart August 4th, 2001. Subsequent information received from INS determined al-Midhar re-entered the United States on July 4th, 2001 on a B-1 visa, flying to New York City, and that he would stay at the Marriott Hotel in New York. This information was immediately relayed verbally to the CIA and FBI New York. On August 27, 2001, headquarters verbally advised New York of the information contained in the headquarters email to FBI New York on August 24, 2001, and further informed FBI New York that headquarters strongly suggested the initiation of a full intelligence investigation to locate and fully identify the individual. The FBI possessed no information relevant to al-Midhar's possible involvement in a terrorist attack, but focused on al-Midhar because he had attended a meeting with a key individual associated in the USS Cole bombing. On August 28, 2001, a full briefing was provided to FBI New York in order to initiate that full field investigation to locate and identify al-Midhar. On August 30, 2001, FBI agents contacted security for the Marriott Corporation, which agreed to do a search of all guests registered at the Marriott hotels in the entire New York metropolitan area. On September 5, 2001, they advised their search for al-Midhar was negative. On September 10, 2001, based upon previously received intelligence, a lead was sent to FBI Los Angeles to conduct a similar search with the security officer of the Sheraton Corporation. This lead was not covered until after September 11th attacks and was also negative. As you're probably aware, there was a debate between headquarters and the FBI New York personnel on whether to open an intelligence or criminal investigation on Khalid al-Midhar. There are two important points to be made in response to this issue. First, the decision to handle al-Midhar investigation as an intelligence investigation was made under procedures which were designed to prevent terrorist acts. Second, although it is not uncommon to open a parallel criminal investigation, we did not have specific, credible evidence of criminal activity to do so. The restrictions of intelligence agencies and foreign services and the sharing of information within our agency limited the free flow of that information. This contributed to our inability to pull together related information. It was frequently difficult to obtain the originating agency's concurrence to pass the information to criminal investigators, even for lead purposes. In terrorism cases, this became so complex and convoluted that in some FBI field offices, FBI agents perceived walls where none actually existed. In fact, one New York supervisor commented that, quote, so many walls had created a maze, unquote, which made it very difficult for the criminal investigators. Internally, the FBI adheres to the restrictions and caveats placed on intelligence information by the originating agency or foreign services. The need for these restrictions and caveats to protect sources and methods of intelligence information is obvious and needs no further explanation. Routinely, intelligence agencies evaluate their disseminable information to determine whether protection beyond basic classification are required. If caveats are required, such as originator-controlled or ORCON, the classified information remains under the control of the originating agency. The FBI is prohibited from disclosing information originally classified by another agency without its authorization. At times, criminal investigators are also frustrated by wall procedures imposed by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. In a class by itself, FISA information is controlled by statute. Although the statute does not preclude the passing of information to criminal investigators, there are restrictions on the use of the information. The FISA Court and the Department of Justice have been cautious through the years of permitting intelligence and criminal investigators to become closely associated for fear their cooperation would be interpreted as an attempt to circumvent the criminal process. Accordingly, the FBI has been required to maintain a certain degree of separation between intelligence and criminal investigators. With the enactment of the Patriot Act after September 11th, it is much clearer that the sharing of information is a government policy issue. Some procedures were relaxed and the policy to share was codified. Post-Patriot Act, the only sharing obstacles relate to the possibility of prosecutorial control over the FISA process. By court order, the FBI is prohibited from discussing a substantive FISA issue with prosecutors unless the Department of Justice, Office of Intelligence Policy and Review, is invited to participate. The same requirement does not pertain to contact between intelligence and criminal agents, although criminal agents cannot control the FISA or the FISA process. Mr. Chairman, the remainder of my statement as regards the international jihad movement will be submitted for the record. In the interest of time, that concludes my oral remarks, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. The FBI agent.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Shelby, Ranking Member Pelosi, and members of the committees. I'm a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation assigned to the New York field office. I appreciate your invitation to appear before your committees today in connection with your joint inquiry into the tragic events of September 11, 2001. I fully understand the responsibility with which you have been charged. I intend to cooperate with you and answer your questions to the best of my ability. I am speaking to you today as an individual agent. The views I express, therefore, are my own, not necessarily those of the FBI, although I believe that my concerns are shared by many fellow agents. I hope by appearing here today that I might, in some small way, to assure the men and women of the FBI and others in the intelligence community have access to the information necessary to carry out their sworn duty to protect the people of the United States. I have no wish in the remarks that follow to be critical of any person, whether they are at FBI headquarters or in the field. FBI personnel work their hearts out to perform their mission. I am before you today to address practices that frustrate us all. Much has been written about how the FBI does not share information with local law enforcement agencies, but the American people must realize that the FBI does not always have access to the information itself, nor is all the information the FBI possesses available to all of its agents. It is my belief that the former problem is due to fear that the Bureau may run ahead or mess up current or future operations of one of our sister agencies, and the latter primarily due to decisions that have snowballed out of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA Court. A concept known as the wall has been created within the law enforcement and intelligence communities. From my perspective, in the broadest sense, the wall is an information barrier placed between elements of an intelligence investigation and those of a criminal investigation. In theory, again, same perspective. It is there to ensure that we, the FBI, play by the rules in our attempts to gather evidence in a criminal case in federal prosecution. I have tried to write this statement knowing full well that its contents and my testimony will be studied by the enemy. Along those lines, much detail has been left out, and if I may, humbly remind everyone that questions regarding sources, other possible operations, investigative methods in this forum should be approached with extreme caution. As an aside, may I say I firmly believe prevention is best served by allowing the law enforcement community, federal and local, to conduct sound, sometimes exigent investigations with access to all information that the U.S. government and liaison governments possess. These investigations build sources, evidence, connections, and information, and are not simply reactive. I would like to assure the American people that in my almost 7 years in the Bureau, the FBI has always been in the prevention, if I may, game. Before going further, I would like to offer a few words of introduction so you're aware of the background that I bring to the questions before the committee. Between 1985 and 1993, I served in the military. After a brief stint in the private sector, I joined the FBI in December 1995 and was assigned to the New York field office's Joint Terrorism Task Force in July 1996. From July 1996 through October 1997, I served on the TWA Flight 800 investigation. On October 1997, I was assigned to the squad that had responsibilities for Taliban and Pakistan matters. Following the East Africa embassy bombings in August 1998, I was part of the first team on the ground, spending a cumulative total of over 30 weeks abroad investigating the bombings. In early 1999, I joined the New York field office's overall Osama bin Laden case squad, which is responsible for the overall investigation of UBL and Al-Qaeda. Immediately after the attack on the USS Cole in Aden, Yemen, on October 12, 2000, I was assigned as one of the case agents who worked on that case, Aden bomb, until the attacks of September 11, 2001. Since then, I have also worked on general UBL matters and have been deployed 12 weeks overseas, working alongside other intelligence community components. I mention this fact because although there are issues about the sharing of information with FBI investigators by the CIA, my experience between the FBI and the intelligence community is that we have worked successfully together. The people of the United States should take great pride in the service and sacrifice of the men and women of all the U.S. agencies and DoD deployed overseas, many of whom I've had the privilege of working with overseas. Briefly, the wall and implied, interpreted, created, or assumed restrictions regarding it prevented myself and other FBI agents working a criminal case out of New York field office from obtaining information from the intelligence community regarding Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in a meeting on June 11, 2001. At the time, there was reason to believe that al-Midhar and al-Hazmi had met with a suspect connected to the attack against the USS Cole. The situation came to a head during the fourth week of August 2001, when, after it was learned that al-Midhar was in the country, FBI HQ representatives in the FBI New York said that FBI New York was compelled to open an intelligence case, and that I nor any of the other criminal case investigators assigned to track al-Qaeda could attempt to locate him. This resulted in a series of emails between myself and the FBI HQ analyst working the matter. In my emails, I asked where this new wall was defined. I wrote on August 29, 2001, whatever has happened to this, someday someone will die, and wall or not, the public will not understand why we were not more effective in throwing every resource we had at certain problems. Let's hope the National Security Law Unit will stand behind their decisions then, especially since the biggest threat to us now, UBL, is getting the most protection. I was told in response that we at headquarters are all frustrated with this issue. These are the rules. NSLU does not make them up. I hope, Messrs. Chairman, these proceedings are a time to break down the barriers and change the system, which makes it difficult for all of us, whether we work at FBI HQ or in the field at the FBI or elsewhere, to have and be able to act on information that we need to do our jobs. Personally, I do not hold any U.S. government-affiliated individual or group of individuals responsible for the attacks on September 11, 2001. I truly believe that if given a chance, any one of them would give or sacrifice anything to prevent what occurred. Then and now, I hold the system responsible. Information is power in the system of intelligence and law enforcement. This will never change, nor could or should it. In addition to the wall, the system as it currently exists, however, seduces some managers, agents, analysts, and officers into protecting turf and being the first to know and brief those above. Often, these sadly mistaken individuals use the wall described herein and others, real and imagined, to control that information. I myself still have two key questions today that I believe are important for this committee to answer. The detailed answers to them will deserve and be afforded the scrutiny of a nation and must stand the test of time and exhaustive investigation. First, if the CIA passed information regarding al-Midhar and al-Hazmi to the FBI prior to June 11, 2001, prior to that June 11, 2001 meeting, in either January 2000 or January 2001, then why was that information not passed either by CIA or FBI headquarters personnel immediately to the New York case agents, criminal or intel, investigating the murder of 17 sailors in Yemen when more information was requested? A simple answer to the wall is unacceptable. Second, how and when did we, the CIA and the FBI, learn that al-Midhar came into the country on either or both occasions in January 2000 and or in July 2001, and what did we do with that information? On September 11, 2001, I spent the morning on the streets with other agents and Joint Terrorism Task Force personnel around the World Trade Center, providing whatever help we could. I and several of my co-workers were within blocks when both towers came down. Within minutes of the second strike on the southern tower, we asked a senior fireman heading towards the south tower what we could do. At the time, he was getting out of his fire truck looking at the towers. By the grace of God, he turned to us and replied that he did not know what we could do, but that we were not going anywhere close to the buildings without a respirator. I do not know who he was, but I truly believed he saved our lives. I also believe that based on the direction that he was looking towards the southern tower, the moments later he entered that tower and perished in the attack. It's taken a while for a response, but I believe that the task before this committee, in some small way, me being here today, is what the brave fireman is telling us, all of us, what we can do. If we do not change the system, if I may say again, someday someone will die, and wall or not, the public will not understand why we're not more effective in throwing every resource we had at certain quote-unquote problems. Thank you for this opportunity and privilege of appearing before you today. I would, of course, welcome your questions.